This is the Money Mike syndicated radio podcast. In the Indiana Fever got another dilemma. That's right, it's the offseason. They got another dilemma to try to figure out what should they do. And the question is, what should they do with Grace Berger? That's a question we got to answer, and we got to find out on that one, folks. Here's the deal. Okay, Money Mike syndicated radio podcast. It's the off season of the WNBA. The most popular team in the WNBA is the Indiana Fever, and now the Indiana Fever have major decision. Right, you got major decision because you got Grace Berger.
Grace, was this season in any way tougher for you, not playing as much as you maybe had hoped? And if so, how did you kind of manage that and keep focusing on what you were doing?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely always tough to not play, especially when that's something you haven't really experienced. So it's tough for anybody in the WNBA, but it happens to a lot of people across the league. There's always, 2 or 3 people on a roster that might not have the role that they want, but you just have to keep working. I have confidence that things will work out for me in the future.
What are you going to do? What are you going to do with Grace Berger? This goes back to Stephanie White, right? Because here's the deal with Indiana, right? Indiana wants to have the culture. Indiana wants to have certain type of players. And Indiana wants to be able to make this work, right? And here's a clog in the wheel that what is Stephanie White going to do? Is Stephanie White going to go ahead and cut Grace Berger? Is Stephanie White going to keep Grace Berger? Is Stephanie White going to be able to get Grace into the lineup, right?
And be better for me, so I think just keep working, staying positive. And then also I had really great teammates, great people in that locker room that made it super easy to stay positive, keep working hard, and, root them on.
That's the question. That's the question you got, right? Because you got a local favorite here, all right? But here's what's funny, right? Because I had an opportunity, and I get Cheryl Swoops. I don't agree with Cheryl Swoops, but I get Cheryl Swoops, what she's saying, how she's doing it, when she talks about the Fever and what are they trying to do, right? Because at the end of the day, I kind of was like, well, let me look back and figure out. Okay, you got Grace Berger. Unless my mind is fooling me, she made the all rookie team, right? And now she came back, and I listened to her in the exit interview, and the reporter. I told you a long time ago that players are not fans.
Just along those lines, what was it like to just work through this season and try to still improve even though you're not playing? Like, what does your day-to-day look like, practices, things like that? And do you go harder in those settings because, I might not get as many minutes as I thought I would or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely can go harder when you're not playing in games, kind of treat it, almost like off-season in terms of individual workouts. I had a great trainer kind of outside of the organization that I was able to work with. At nighttime, focus on, expanding my game, which you might not have been able to do if you were playing regularly in the rotation. So it was good for me in that aspect to keep working on my individual game so I can be ready in the future.
Right? So you can't get Lexi Hall to be a fan of somebody in the WNBA, right? You can't get Caitlin to be a fan of another player in the WNBA. Well, I got the reporters are asking Grace, about Caitlin Clark, and it was embarrassing in the exit interview, right? They were asking her, like, what did you do with your time because you weren't playing, right? Well, what do you think I did? I was sitting there upset, not playing. This team drafted me. I'm the local player. So
Grace, obviously from the Big Ten. There's a lot of other Big Ten players that are out there, and one of them, of course, is Caitlin. Mm-hmm. Could you describe just your rivalry? Obviously, you've played a lot of games against Iowa, big games, right, with IU, and then having her as a teammate. And any thoughts or any specifics even on was that fun? How fun was it? Watching her success, just anything along those lines. Thanks.
Yeah, it was really fun, I think, especially for someone like me who got to see her since she was a freshman at Iowa. And just, immediately you can tell how talented she was. I kind of had too close of a front row seat for that at Indiana. She got the best of me and us quite a bit. But
so here's a scenario that really took place that the way the Fever wanted it to work, right? Because there was something the Fever were trying to do here, and it all makes sense to me now. All right, so the Indiana Fever, and we talk about Kelsey Mitchell, right? There was no plans of retaining Kelsey Mitchell, right? I can see the writing on the wall, and it doesn't take me long. It takes me about 30 seconds to figure this out, right? So Mitchell, they drafted Grace, took her with the 7th pick in the draft, right? 7th pick in the draft on the Indiana Fever.
I knew how talented she was. I knew she was a once in a lifetime player. So for me, already being in the league and then welcoming her in, there was no question for me that she would translate pretty much immediately. I mean, she's one of a kind. She's a once in a lifetime player, and just a hard worker, super talented. So it's definitely been more fun to be her teammate than to play against her. I can tell you that she's not very fun to play against. But just to get to know her kind of off the court, how good of a person she is, how lighthearted she is, which she's super competitive on the floor, and that light switches as soon as she gets off. She's funny, the jokester in the locker room. So it's been fun to get to know her on a different level.
Now, you move to the day, then you come right behind it, and you draft Caitlin Clark, right? So Grace was running the point guard spot. That's who they intended to run the point guard spot. Fell out of the lineup, couldn't keep pace with the Indiana Fever.
Yeah.
And then in terms of just trying to stay ready and contribute, did you try to find other ways, or how do you find other ways to help the team when the minutes may not be there? And then how much are you just looking for to showcase that work that you said you put in the Winter League?
Yeah, I think, like I said earlier, it's easy to stay ready when you have teammates that come in every day. They're working hard themselves, and that's just kind of was the culture around here. People getting up extra shots, people staying after practice. So it's easy to stay motivated in those situations.
Now you got Stephanie White, right? So you got to ask yourself, okay, Stephanie White, what are you going to do? Because should Grace be on the Indiana Fever? Should she be on the Indiana Fever? Should she be getting minutes on the Indiana Fever? Or should she be a starter on the Indiana Fever? Because I keep going through the list, and everybody keeps telling me, hey, well, we got this player that's really good, right? And now Stephanie White, do you want to win a championship? Because if you want to win a championship, you mean you're going to have to cut a local favorite, right?
I think focusing on practice, doing what I can there to try to make my teammates better was something that I kind of locked in on. And then during the games, just being, supportive for them as much as I could. And then I'm excited. I've put in a lot of individual work this summer. I'm going to Turkey on Tuesday. So getting to play with professionals from across the world, getting to showcase and then just get better, compete with the best. I'm excited.
You got to ask yourself this question. What do the Indiana Fever do with the local hero that they took with the 7th pick in the draft? Because it looks like she's not in the plans. She's not in the plans. She's not very happy about this. And she's doing it, as the Indiana Fever would say, doing it under a culture of a player not happy with their role, not happy with their minutes. Why did you draft me? You didn't need to bring me here to sit me on the bench. I could have had better opportunity somewhere else, right?
Yeah, I hope it becomes the norm. It should be. I think with more eyes on the WNBA, people started to fall in love with it. Not only in the state of Indiana, but we were selling out arenas all across the country, which definitely was not the case in my first year. So I think just getting more eyes on the game has been super special, and people are realizing how great of a product it is, how it's just as exciting as the men's game, how it's just as exciting as the college game, and how talented of people we have in this league. So I think it's been really exciting to be a part of and see, and I just hope that it becomes the norm moving forward.
Now the media's got to ask this question, because I know here's the thing that with the Indiana Fever, they don't want to address this question. But if you're going to win a WNBA championship, Kelly's got to address it. I mean, you got to look at it, and you get to Amy. Amy's got to address it, right? Because you're not going to come in here and try to keep a player, or for the sake of fans, or for the sake of bringing fans into the arena because she's local. Because I can honestly tell you this: Grace Berger is not fit the Indiana Fever. And if Stephanie White's talking about playing defense, right? You talk about playing defense. Well, she doesn't fit the Indiana Fever of the defense they want to play and the speed they want to play, right? So the game got away from Grace. They went and scout. Well, you didn't have to scout her because she was right next door to you playing in Indiana, right? Well, now you got Caitlin Clark and Kelsey Mitchell has the roles, right? Because they didn't have any plans for Kelsey Mitchell. And I get it. I mean, at the end of the day, if they wanted Mitchell, they'd have put another 3-year contract in front of her, signed her, should have never been an unrestricted free agent, right? First thing I said when I got this, okay, you got Caitlin Clark. Now Caitlin Clark's so good, you bring it in Stephanie White to coach her, right? But who coached Kelsey Mitchell? Grace has fell down, folks. Grace is not even getting any minutes. Came in there, you got to look at this. She averaged, I mean, she made the all-rookie team. And I don't know how you make the all-rookie team, but however she did it, right? Well, Grace makes the all-rookie team local favorite, right? But she makes the all-rookie team averaging 4 points a game, right? So nobody was paying attention. If you go back, and I'm not going to get into the names, but if you go back and look at the 2023 all-rookie team, and you look at the 2024, you're going to see a major difference because you got eyes on it. Now, you forgot to play one position that's the most critical position. Grace Berger can't play defense, right? And this is an intangible I see. And when I see this type of intangible, it's usually one or two ways, right? You get a lot of players, and these are pro players, who their offense plays faster than their defense, right? Which means, and most of the time, it's the players, they kind of take that time off, or they don't commit as much to offense as they do to defense, right? So you got to get them committed there, right? But to get them committed, they got to have the foot speed. In 30 seconds of looking at Grace Berger, I saw her get beat 3 times. I said, she don't got the foot speed to play defense in this league, right? Because and then I had to go back and search, and I'd say, let me scout it out a little deeper. Let me see why they drafted her, right? So they drafted her to play 3 different positions when they needed to draft her to play 4 different positions, right? So what did they draft her to be? Well, she could play the point guard, the 2 guard, or the wing, which 100% is correct, right? But the 4th position, you got to play defense. The foot speed is too slow. So she's getting beat off the dribble in the WNBA. And you see this because in college it's kind of structured, but now in the WNBA, you got Grace doesn't have the foot speed to guard anybody, right? So now you got to look at this and you got to say, okay, now what does Stephanie White do? Because this is a major decision, all right? Because this is that first decision Stephanie White's going to upset a lot of people, right? Because if you cut Grace, you were, right? So now the other question is, if you keep Grace, are you holding up a roster spot for somebody else you could bring in that could be a major contributor to the Fever? Couple players, 2 or 3 players, right? You got Alyssa Smith, who doesn't fit the Fever. You don't want her. You got Grace, who you love, but she doesn't help the Fever, right? Because she's not going to get any minutes when you got Kelsey Mitchell, Caitlin Clark, and Lexi Hull in the draft. Stephanie White, do you keep Grace or do you let Grace go on and enjoy her career? When you see players go overseas, let me explain overseas to you, because some people may or may not know how overseas works, right? So when a player goes overseas, they usually allow to have 2 or 3 Americans, right? And the rest of them is just the local players there, right? And it's going to come down to the valuation or the value of the owner for that particular team. So you could have a league overseas where you have one owner is like the Indiana Fever, just making just mountains of money, and then you got another player who could be on the same league, and that owner has no money, right? WNBA basketball. So please don't take what a player does overseas, because that you basically, if you want to make it equivalent to what you have now in the Euro League, they have the top leagues, right? You got the top. But when you look at the players here, they go into the top league, right? And you got some WN players are playing in the top, but the others are in the B, the C, or the D league, right? Because the Euroball, the way it works out, you got an A league, B league, C league, D league. And sometimes you got to work your way up from the lower division to the upper division, right? Stephanie White's got a big time question. What do I do with Grace? Native, okay, of Indiana. She was handpicked to be on Indiana. And Lynn Dunn said this was the perfect player for Christie's side. He saw him sitting over there, and guess what? Lit it up, played good, and they said, wow, we got a player. We got to take her, right? So you took her with the 7th pick. Now she goes from 4 points down to 1 point, no minutes, and I got the Indiana Fever are sitting there asking her questions about another pro player. And you know what she responded? She said, look, here's the deal. I talked to my trainer. I work out my trainer. I'm working on my game because you basically got me here for no reason. White's got to make the decision, right? Okay, Stephanie, what are you going to do? Are we going to keep Grace? Are we going to cut Grace? We're going to release Grace? We're going to trade Grace? Because at the end of the day, I don't care how much of a hometown hero you are. All right. And I don't care what university or wherever you go, people go in college. I tell players all the time, there's one thing I'm going to tell you. You can never replace minutes. You could never replace minutes. And I'll tell you this, Grace Berger doesn't want to play for the Indiana Fever if they're not going to play. Now, here, because this is a local fan favorite. That's right, Indiana Fever. Grace. Is she going to be with the Fever next year, or do you let her go start her career? Stephanie White's talking defense, right? She wants Indiana Fever. She wants the defense. She wants to play like the Connecticut Sun. Well, you two are top heavy here. Grace doesn't fit. Caitlin, going to be Caitlin. Lexi is going to be Lexi. So you got to look at that. Kelsey Mitchell, we already know what she's about. She's already trying to become the MVP of the WNBA, and she's going to have a better year next year. She's going to put in the work. But when it gets to Grace, I don't know. Is Grace going to be around? We'll find out. All things are possible to those who believe, and this is the Money Mike Syndicated Radio Podcast.